In this lesson, I wanted to talk a little bit about the full arpeggios that correspond to the shapes of the CAGED system. You know, one of the shortcomings of the CAGED system is that you've got the 5 chord shapes, but those shapes don't really outline all of the available notes that are available in that position. If you can study these arpeggios a little bit, it'll open up a few more possibilities for you because it brings in a few more notes that aren't present in the straight CAGED shapes, but are perfectly useful when you're improvising a line. So first, I'm going to talk about the arpeggios themselves, how to think about them, how to visualize them on the neck of the guitar. And then afterwards, I'll talk a little bit about some different ways that you can apply these arpeggios in your improvisation that you might not have thought of. Alright, so I zoomed in a little closer so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to start by breaking down each of the 5 CAGED shapes. I'm going to show you how to build a full triad arpeggio out of those CAGED shapes. And then I'll go on to show you some 7th chord arpeggios, which I generally find a little more useful for improvising than the triad arpeggios. So the first shape is the C shape. I'll do all my examples here in the key of E. So the first shape is the C shape. To make an E chord using that shape, I'm in the 4th position, bar the 4th fret, and make a C chord above that bar. Now the full arpeggio there is going to look like this. So the CAGED shape itself doesn't really have all of the possible notes in it for the arpeggio. If I want to do all of the possible notes in that position, I'd start here on the 3rd and go 3rd, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th. Here it is again. Now, to make a major 7th arpeggio, all we're going to do is add in the 7th to that arpeggio that I just played. The 7th is really easy to find. If you know where the root is, the major 7th is just 1 fret below it. So our root notes were here on the 5th string 7th fret and on the 2nd string 5th fret. So if I just add in the major 7th there, that's going to be here and here. So when I add that to the whole arpeggio, making a dominant 7th arpeggio out of that same shape is real easy. You just take the 7th that I just added, but you're going to flat it, so you're going to lower it by 1 more fret. Now my 7ths are here, 5th string, 5th fret, and where my major 7th was here on the 2nd string, 4th fret, I could flat that and put it over here, but instead I'm going to grab that D here on the 3rd string, 7th fret. That's going to put it in a little more reachable position for me. So that arpeggio then is going to look like this. In order to make that into a minor arpeggio, a minor 7 arpeggio, all we have to do is take that same one that I just did and flat the 3rd. My 3rds in this case were located, actually the first note that I played here is a 3rd, so I'm going to flat that. G sharp is becoming a G. There was a G sharp here, that's going to move to G here. And finally there was a G sharp here, which is going to move down to here. So that arpeggio, starting on the minor 3rd, is going to look like this. Next shape is the CAGED A shape. So for the key of E, that's going to fall here in 7th position. And I have this A-shaped bar chord as kind of my basic CAGED shape. Now the full triad arpeggio, so root, 3rd, 5th, the full triad arpeggio that fits this shape is going to look like this. It's going to start on the 5th here down on the 7th fret. Oops. Now in this case my root notes are here and here, 7th fret, 5th string, and 9th fret, 3rd string. So I'm going to add the major 7th to make this into an E major 7 arpeggio. That's going to look like this. And actually you can even reach that one here. Now I'm going to flat the 7th on this one and make it into a dominant 7th arpeggio. So instead of grabbing my flatted 7th on the same string as the root here, now I'm going to grab it over here just because it makes it a little more convenient, and that's going to look like this. And then I can make a minor 7 arpeggio by flatting the 3rd on this one. My 3rd was over here before. I'm going to flat that actually, but move it to this string and grab it here. And then the other 3rd was here, and I'm going to flat it here. And actually, this shape outlines a really familiar chord shape. It's this E minor shape, and the E minor 7 arpeggio that corresponds to that is going to look like this. That's a real easy one to remember. All right. Okay, now I'm going to move on to the G shape. So for the key of E, the G shape falls here in 9th position. This isn't the most convenient chord to actually play, but you can visualize it here. 9th, if you imagine a bar here, and then the shape of a G chord above that, will give you that for E. So the full triad arpeggio here is going to start on the root here on the 12th fret, root, 3rd, 5th. Now to make a major 7 arpeggio out of that, locate my root notes here, here, and here. And this one, you could grab your major 7th in a couple different places. It's a half step below the root. You had a root here, you can grab it there, although that's not that convenient fingering wise, and instead I tend to grab that G sharp, or I'm sorry, D sharp, the 7th of an E chord, over here. So the major 7 arpeggio in that spot is going to look like this. Flat that 7th each time, and now I have a dominant 7th arpeggio. Now I locate the 3rds, flat them, and I have a minor 7 arpeggio. My 3rd is a G sharp. Here I have one on the 11th fret of the 5th string, another one on the 9th fret of the 2nd string. That one, instead of just flatting it by moving it over here, I'm going to grab that there on the 12th fret of the 3rd string. So when I do the minor 7th arpeggio in this position, it's going to look like this, starting on the flatted 7th here. All right, now the E shape. So the E shape for the key of E is going to fall here on the 12th fret. My full triad arpeggio there is going to look like this. Add the major 7th to that, and now my arpeggio is going to look like this for an E major 7. Flat those 7ths, and now I have an E7 arpeggio. Now I flat my thirds, and that gives me a minor 7 arpeggio, and then that one really starts to look a whole lot like this E minor chord that you're probably quite familiar with. And that one really starts to, you probably know this pentatonic scale fingering. Really, you only have to add one note to that minor 7 arpeggio, which is the 4th, and that gives you the minor pentatonic scale. Those two things are practically interchangeable when you're improvising. Alright, and finally we get to the D shape. I'm going to move back down here and grab the D shape in the 2nd position. This isn't the most convenient chord to play again, but I'm barring the 2nd fret and then visualizing the shape of a D chord right here. So my full triad arpeggio for an E chord is going to start on the 3rd here, and it's going to look like this. Put the 7th in that, the major 7th, and now I have a major 7 arpeggio. It's going to look like this. Put the flatted 7th in it, and now it's going to look like this. And then finally drop the 3rd, and that's going to become a minor 7 arpeggio. Frankly, the D shape for the CAGED system, I find that to be the least convenient and the least useful out of all of them. So I'm going to kind of gloss over that one. Honestly, I practically never use it. It overlaps pretty heavily with the C shape, which falls right here. And that's just a much easier fingering to play. So I use that one a lot more and rarely use the D shape for much of anything. So to end off, what I want to do is talk a little bit now about what you can do with these arpeggios in an improvisational setting to get some extra mileage out of them and to get some different ideas within the modes if you're using modes as your source for improvising. So let's take A mixolydian as an example. So the A mixolydian, now this is all covered in the modes workshop on my website. If you're not sure what I'm talking about here, I recommend you look through that. But I'll kind of gloss through it right now. The A mixolydian mode is actually based off of the D major scale. The chords that belong to the D major scale would be D major 7, E minor 7, F sharp minor 7, G major 7, A 7, B minor 7, and C sharp minor 7 flat 5. I haven't covered the minor 7 flat 5 arpeggios in this video. It's actually a useful arpeggio, but I'm going to cover the others right now for the sake of simplicity. So, in the mode of A mixolydian, all those arpeggios that I just listed are fair game in your improv. There are a couple things that I like to do more often than others. These work particularly well, although you can play around with the other ideas and find a lot of good stuff there. But these ideas are real easy to remember, and they work particularly well. So from your home of A mixolydian, A, you can go down a step and play a major 7 arpeggio, so that would be a G major 7 arpeggio. You can go up a step from home and do a minor 7 arpeggio, so B minor 7 arpeggio. And another thing that works really well is to go to the 5th. In this case, that would be E, and play a minor 7 arpeggio, so an E minor 7 arpeggio. So I'm going to start up a backing track here in A mixolydian and show you what a little bit of that sounds like. And I'll point out too, when I do these arpeggios, it tends to sound best if I take the arpeggio and then finish it off by doing something that's a little more clearly off of the A chord. So I'm going to start out my backing track here, and I'll demonstrate a few of these ideas. So I might start off by playing some stuff straight off of the A chord. Then I can go to a G major 7 arpeggio. Then come back to an A chord tone. Go to a B minor 7 arpeggio. I'm going to do that based off of this B minor chord. Return back to an A chord tone. Finally, an E minor 7 arpeggio. I'll do that off of this E minor right here, and come back to something in A right there. Point out that you can extend those arpeggios as long as you want to. Sooner or later, it starts to sound more and more like you need to bring it home to the A chord, but that can be a great tension building device. You know, the longer you stay away from home, home being that A chord, the more tension you can build. Now, interestingly enough, those exact same ideas work in the Dorian mode too. So, if I'm going to take, now let's take A Dorian as our kind of home mode. Well, A Dorian is actually based on the G major scale. The chord scale of G major 7, A minor 7, B minor 7, C major 7, D7, E minor 7, F sharp minor 7, flat 5. But as my go-to examples, I'm going to do the same exact thing that I did with the Mixolydian mode. I'm going to go down a step, so to the G, and play a major 7 arpeggio. Go up a step to the B, play minor 7 arpeggio, and go to the 5th, which is E, also a minor 7 arpeggio. Let me demonstrate a bit of that. So here's a bit backing track in A Dorian. So I'll start off in A minor to get the sound going. I'm going to do a G major 7. In this case, I'm going to base it off of this caged C shape, which is here in the 7th position. And of course, I can always resolve that back to A minor by doing something like this. To B minor 7 arpeggio, which actually you might notice looks an awful lot like a G major 7 arpeggio. That's going to sound like this. Bringing it back to the A minor. And finally, I can go to an E minor 7 arpeggio, again, and then return back to A minor. So this time I'll use an E minor 7 arpeggio up here in the 12th position, off of that shape, E minor, and then that's going to return to A minor, like this. So that's just a couple of ideas on how you can use arpeggios in a modal context to bring some different ideas out and build a little bit of tension. There's lots of possibilities there, and I encourage you to sit and ponder it and investigate them all, because there's a lot you can do. It all boils down to knowing the chord scale that goes with the mode that you're playing. If you're not sure about all that, I highly recommend you check out the modes workshop at my website. Also, all of the arpeggios that I covered in this lesson and many others are available on my website. I did a whole page dedicated to this concept. If you go to the lessons on the CAGED system on my website, look for the lesson called Arpeggios in the CAGED system. All of this will be there.